Stolen Bicycle by Miss O'Brien. The first time I laid eyes on it, I couldn't believe my luck. Shiny purple streamers, a brown wicker basket, sleek chrome handlebars, and the most cushioned, comfy seat in the whole world. The bike I received for my 10th Christmas was everything I ever wanted. How was I to know in that moment that it would land me in the principal's office? I rode my beloved bike for just 2 weeks when it was taken. After winter break, as I rode to Laurel Bay Elementary School, I pretended I was in a parade with my streamers waving in the cold January air. I had been rushing to get to school on time and simply forgotten to use the new bike lock that Santa stuffed in my stocking. I remember the metal bike rack was icy, and I worried about my bike getting rusty in the elements. When school was over, I went to the spot I had left it, but it was gone. I stood there, stunned. Now, a week later, a wave of grief still shot through my body when I remembered the moment I became the victim of bicycle theft. I thought about my bike every day, especially at night when I lie in bed trying to sleep. As my family slept, I would lie awake wondering where it could be. Who would do such a thing? Was it someone at school? It must be some bad kid. One day, after lunch, I was outside playing at recess when I couldn't believe my eyes. Off in the distance, I spotted it. It was back. Perhaps the person who stole it felt guilty and returned it to the bike racks in the middle of the night. Or maybe the thief had been riding it to school every day, unbeknownst to me. Since I was now walking to school, I wouldn't have seen it. I couldn't be sure until I took a closer look. The bike racks were on the other side of the soccer fields, under a small grove of trees. In order to investigate, I would need to leave the playground area where 80 kids noisily played. I asked my close friend, Ashley Montana, if she would go investigate with me. No way, she said, not taking her eyes off the jump rope she was turning for double dutch. The long plastic jump rope clicked the ground as 3 of my other friends giggled and jumped. The bike racks are too far away. If you go over there, you'll get in trouble. Quick. No, I won't, I said. Quick. It's not that far. It's not even out of sight. And anyway, if it is my bike, then I can ride home with you today. Click. Nope, she said. Sorry. Fine, I said. Click. I was upset with Ashley, but felt determined. I started walking toward the bike racks. Halfway there, I stopped and turned to face everyone at recess. They were farther than I thought. It will be fine, I thought, as long as I can still hear the teacher's whistle blow at the end of recess. I can line up with everyone as if I had never left. I just need to hurry. I sped up to a jog and arrived, panting. I scanned the rows of bikes. Ah, there it is. I touched the white bike speckled with bright turquoise and purple and neon pink. I loved how it looked like an artist had splattered colors across the bike frame. I noticed the handlebars were missing streamers in a basket, and it had a horn. My bike didn't have that. But, I figured, whoever stole my bike could have easily tried to disguise it. I felt like a detective. The case of the stolen bicycle. I knew my name was written in black Sharpie marker underneath the crossbar, so I got on my knees in the dirt to look closer. Nothing was written. Maybe this wasn't the bike I had spotted from afar. The cold ground made me shudder. It dawned on me that I had been mistaken. None of these bikes were mine. I turned to head back to my friend's jumping rope. Suddenly, I stopped. The large space, which had just minutes before been filled with the entire 5th grade at Laurel Bay Elementary School, was empty and silent. I began to walk faster, wondering how long ago they went inside. Would Mrs. Haught notice I was missing? Could I sneak into my classroom unnoticed? Almost on cue, Mrs. Haught appeared, power walking toward me. She looked like a bull about to charge me across the field. Oh no, she's really mad at me. She began calling my name. I was still walking toward her, but my pace had slowed because I was afraid of her anger. I wanted to run the other way, but I knew that would only make it worse. I knew this was bad. I didn't know what to say. I had never seen Mrs. Haught upset like this. Her eyebrows were intense and sharp, and I couldn't understand what she was saying when she began to speak. The icy wind blew her brown ringlets into her mouth as she scolded me. One of the words that I heard stung my ears. Principal. I started to speak, but I felt the words stick in my throat. I was only trying to see if my I don't want to hear a word. I was worried sick. We had no idea where you went. But I was only going, you have no idea what you put me through. What were you thinking? The lump in my throat burned. I tried to swallow it to keep from crying, but it was too late. The tears began spilling out of my eyes, slow at first, and then full speed, like a kitchen sink faucet turned on full blast. I was only going to, I started to say. What possessed you to leave the class? I didn't even know you were gone until I tuned her out. I was too upset to hear anymore. All I could hear was the sound of my ugly crying and her heavy footsteps on the ground as she marched me to the principal's office. I remembered how calm Mrs. Hotz had been when she was reading aloud to us before lunch, how she had smiled and called on me to answer a question. Not anymore. My mind raced. I had never been to the principal's office for being naughty. I had been called to the office for early dismissals and to check the lost and found. Only the bad kids went to the principal's office. Was I a bad kid now? Would Mrs. Hott ever like me again? All I wanted was to find my bike, which a truly bad kid had stolen from me. That's who should be going to the principal's office. I barely remember walking into the school and to the office. I was ushered to a big formal looking chair with cushions. Mrs. Hott spoke to the secretary, and I could see their heads nodding toward each other. The secretary put her arm on Mrs. Hott's shoulder, and that's when I saw how red Mrs. Hott's face was. And were those tears in her eyes? Oh no, this was worse than I thought. I had made my beloved teacher cry. I was a bad kid. I began to cry again. Mrs. Hott left the main office without looking back at me. I knew she would never forgive me. Maybe the principal would banish me from her class, and I would have to start over in a new class with a different teacher. The next thing I knew, the principal was standing at the door asking me to come into her office. I felt like I was going to faint. I began apologizing and speaking as fast as I could. I didn't mean to. I was only trying to. I mean, someone stole my bike and I saw it and I told Ashley and take a deep breath, the principal said calmly. She was actually a lot nicer than I thought she'd be. Tell me what happened from the beginning. She listened patiently as I recounted the events of the day, all the while crying. She handed me a tissue when I was overcome with emotion and mucus as I ugly cried through my story. And then she did the strangest thing. She smiled. I think you've learned an important lesson today, haven't you? She said. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to call your parents and let them know what happened. Don't worry, it will be okay. My head began to spin. My parents? I didn't even think of that. This is the worst day of my life so far. What will my parents say when they find out that I left my class at recess and made my teacher cry and got sent to the principal's office and now I was an official bad kid? It turns out the principal couldn't get a hold of my mother at home, so she phoned my father. My father's work was close to the school, so he offered to come in and see me after the principal told him how upset I was. I dreaded his arrival because I knew I had let him down. I was a bad kid now. I'll never forget my dad's face when he walked into the main office and greeted the secretary. The door to the principal's office had a little window, and I could see him the moment he spotted me sitting across from the principal. He pointed at me and smiled a goofy grin. I was confused. Why wasn't he mad? The principal welcomed him and they shook hands. Then he turned to face me, and I leapt into his arms and cried and cried. He hugged me tightly and patted my hair. Shh, shh, it's okay, he whispered. I suddenly felt calm and warm, like someone had wrapped me in a blanket. The principal stepped out and left us alone. He continued to hold me while I recounted the events. You're not a bad kid, Jess, he said. You shouldn't have left your class and worried your teacher. You should have left the investigating to the school officials and police. But I see you know that. You weren't thinking, were you? Because you love that bike and it's gone. I knew in that moment that my bike was gone forever. But I didn't care as much anymore because my father was there and everything was going to be okay. I wasn't a bad kid. I was a good kid who made a bad choice. A thief may have stolen my bike, but could never steal something important like my father's love for me. I would apologize to Mrs. Hott and maybe she would forgive me like my dad. At least I hoped. I never saw that bike again, but I also never got sent to the principal's office again either.